What's up, everybody? Austin Folingo here with jamplay.com. Hope everybody's doing all right. It's hot here in Nashville. It's very, very hot. And this Triad chord solo we're going to do is going to be hot today too as well, guys. So welcome to week 2 of jazz guitar chord solos. So last week, let's just do a recap real quick. We got a new course here. Essentially, the goal for this course is to get you guys playing some nice chord solo kind of stuff to kind of differentiate the single line sort of vibe. So, you know, single line being, you know, to more, you know, all that kind of stuff, right? So with that being said, a good way to start where we started last week was triads. So just to kind of review really quick, we talked about major, minor, augmented, and diminished, right? We started with C. I started with the cage system, kind of a good way to just sort of see all your shapes. So, you know, you had your C form, A form, G form, E form, D form, and C form again of C, right? And then we talked about, you know, and then how kind of the A form and the G form with triads kind of combine, right? Kind of like an A territory here, and then you sort of move to, you know, G territory. Then E into kind of D territory, and then always bring it up an octave, right? To major, right? So we did major, like I said, minor, augmented, diminished. Obviously, I think we all gathered that diminished was by far the kind of the What's up, everybody? Austin Folingo here with jamplay.com. Hope everybody's doing all right. It's hot here in Nashville. It's very, very hot. Said minor, augmented, diminished. Obviously, I think we all gathered that diminished was by far the kind of the tougher, you know, fingerings and, you know, it's just stuff that we don't use as much as majors and minors, you know. Augmented too. Augmented keeps a lot of the same shapes, though, if you remember, where we had, like, it's kind of the same pattern, right? So that was nice. So this week, like I said, I'm going to take a simple melody. I'm just going to kind of, we're going to use major, we're going to use minor, we're going to use augmented and diminished for sure. But I'm just going to kind of show you some cool ways to like approach this stuff. Just kind of how I would think about it in sort of a practical way, but creative as well. So yeah, with that being said, let's pull up example. Hold on, let me grab it too. Triad harmony basic melody. All right. So here's just like a basic, right? Nothing too flashy. Now check this out. Like I said, this is a little bit of arrangement techniques and stuff too. But, you know, first thing I'm going to do, and you don't have to know a whole lot of theory on this, but like, you know, it's good to understand that F, right, and like D minor share the same key signature. Obviously, there's one flat, which is a B flat, right? So I kind of just chose some chords. They're not, by far, not the only option. And as we kind of go through some of these examples, you'll start to kind of see that, you know, even just like little nuances and just, you know, switching a note here or there using triads, you'll see you come up with some really neat sounds. But, you know, like I said, very simple melody. Chord-wise, I put it in 3, so, you know, it's kind of a waltz sort of thing. But, you know, you have... Right? Melody is... Right? Now here's the thing, right? Is and we're going to get into that in the next example, there's a whole lot, you know, and if you've never really done the whole chord solo thing, like how I started, I would just play a melody like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that you know, can sound really good if you have, you know, a bass player behind you, a drummer, if you're playing the chords, you know, well, we'll talk about more like guitar trio settings, right? So that works just fine, you know, but what if you could put some chords underneath that to sort of support the harmony, right? That's kind of the whole point of, you know, the jazz guitar solos course. So I'm going to say that, right? But also, like, I just kept it major, but you could, you know, check this out, you know. And that's where like a little bit of harmony, understanding like relative major and relative minor and stuff can you know, really help. I mean, you can make this a whole different tune, right? So like kind of having those kind of tools, like I said, it you know, it helps. You know, the other thing is when you look at a melody like this, right? Like I sort of picked these chords, like I said, by far not the only option. I mean, we could have done like a B flat major 7 for the second chord because it's an A, and the A is the major 7, right? So you could have like a 1 to 4 relationship, meaning F to B flat, which in the key of F, you know, F is 1, B flat is 4, right? So, right? Like there's so many options, like I said, and that's really like what I want you guys to take away from this is like, don't look at this as like an exercise. I know I can, you know, I feel like I say this in every lesson, but I say it because I think it's important, right? But don't, you know, just think, oh, this is like a cool thing I learned from Austin in F on Triads. You know, like take this stuff, you know, plug it into different tunes, create your own. Take, you know, this, X out F and D minor or whatever, and see what you can come up with, you know? That's where the learning really starts. But, yeah, okay, so now what we're going to do, you know, one more thing I was going to say, too, before we get to the other example, is, you know, like, that's the thing, too. Let your ear guide you. Like, I don't know, you know, I mean, if it sounds wrong, it could very well not be. I mean, you know, since before we come out of the womb, like, you know, in Western tonal music, it's like we, you know, we know what sounds good and doesn't. Like, you know, a 5-year-old kid could tell you if it's bad or not. You know what I mean? And that's just, like I said, that's what I'm saying is like with using your ear, it goes a long way. You know, just because it's on the piece of paper doesn't mean it can be the only way or the only right way. You know, so like I said, I think just conceptually, you know, be open-minded about stuff. Like, be creative, you know, when we do this. Okay, so like I said, you know, here's our first example, right? It's a basic melody. There's nothing beneath it, right? Single line, you know, all of us, you know, whether you're reading the tab or the music, you know, we've all seen this and just plugged along, right? So, like I said, now what we're going to do is we're going to use what we did last week to incorporate making this like a little chord melody, if you will. Another thing, you know, like I talked about, I would probably, you know, it's good to be running those triads up and down the neck all the time. So like before you even start, like, you know, take your, you know, and, you know, hopefully since last week, you know, you kind of see and understand that. It's like, okay, well, here's my lowest F note or F chord like we talked about, right? So it's like I want to start with where are all my F triads there, right? That's always good just to kind of cover your ground before you get going. And I know there's different chords in here and stuff, but like, you know, even like I did playing the shapes, you know, right? However you want to do them, and there's several areas, and we're going to do that kind of at the end of this lesson, but you know, it's not a bad idea just to really ingrain this kind of stuff is go, okay, F. Right? And then go to D minor. Well, where's my lowest D minor? Oh, I'm sorry. You know, and so on and so on. Okay, well, where's my lowest B flat? Right? Like I said, it sort of helps the light bulb come on with learning the territory, right? Okay, so guys, now let's move on. We're going to jazz this puppy up here, or harmonize this puppy up. It's not too jazzy, but it's a good way to start. Let's move to example Triad Harmony Study 1. Okay, now here's another good approach with doing this. And what we're doing, sorry, I'm looking at my notes too. What we're doing here is now we're gonna spice it up, right? So, important thing, you know, the melody is always on top. You know, it's also good sometimes just to play that again. Sorry. Right, just to sort of keep that in your head. But now what we're going to do is we're going to use some triads to just make it sound a lot hipper, right? So we have, like I said, everything, guys, is fingered correctly and everything as I would do it. Not the only option. You could do it however you want. Like I said, make it your own, you know, but like I said, now we're going to start, you know, putting some harmony to it, making it sound a lot hipper, right? So straight up, you know, right where we started, there's your triads. Great way to start. You know, we got an F chord. Now, here's the thing is, like, you know, and we're going to see more of this in the next example, but as far as right now, like, the G note is sort of a passing tone in F, so I'm just treating that like that. It's sort of just like I'm leaving it alone. You'll see I'm going to do something really cool with it in the next example. But, you know, I'm just playing it as a single, right? And this is what's cool with triads and chord melodies too, is you can do a lot of that stuff. Like, you know, if I did like a you know, you can kind of blend both, and you know, the better that you get at it, and you know, the more that you do it, I think you'll start to see that, and you know, you can kind of come up with your own ways to do all this kind of stuff. But yeah, from the beginning we have, right, and then I moved up to the D minor like that, and now I'm at B flat, D in the bass, right? So kind of the same move up here as down here. Like I said, when I practice with stuff, I always look for those similarities. I find it helps and can kind of speed up the process. But we have, right? And now here, right, and then we have a dominant 7. I'll go over it slowly here in a minute. And then this is cool. We have a little inner line right here. Right? Okay, so let's talk about some harmonic stuff real quick, right? Like I said, I chose F. It could have been in D minor in a way. Last week, the last thing we touched upon was using the triads in the diatonic progression, right? So we had, which is a chord scale. So if we took an F scale, you know, you can do a chord scale to it. Right? All that stuff. You know, I like to look at chords like this, and if you looked at Slices of Jazz, the last course I just did, you can check it out in the archives. I talk about, like, you know, harmony and how to approach it with scales and all that. But that's kind of good to know, you know. So I'm looking at it, you know, it's like it's a 1 chord for sure, and then a 6 minor, 4 chord, 2 minor, right? Now back to a 1 chord, F, you know, which is what, bar 5, and then G7th, right, which is a 2 chord. Earlier in the standard example, and I left that like that for a reason, it's just G, right? But like I said, now what we want to do is we're going to use some of these knowledge with Triad. I'm going to show you a couple tricks here in a second. It just brings it to life, right? Rather than just, you know, you got, I love that, you know, it's lots of spice. You know, you have those like inner lines and stuff working, and you know, it's piano player stuff too, guys. You know, I mean, they approach it way differently, you know, but like I said, you start to learn these little tricks, and it's super helpful, right? Now, a couple things, right? Remember, this is jazz guitar solos, so I could have kept it very, you know, I could have just did a G right there, you know. But, you know, I like the 7th sound. Now, what's important to know, and we talked about this a little bit last week, is with triads, and as the course goes on, I'll kind of explain more of this along the way, but, you know, you can sub, like, if the triad was G, right, when we want to make a G7th, remember that you can take your root and take the root out and use a flat 7 instead, right? It's just a substitution, right? It's the same like when I talked about on the second bar, if say it was B flat, right? Major 7th, you know, you could sub that out. Now that also equals D minor. And another thing about that, and you know, follow me on this, is like, and I've talked about this a lot last week too, is with these triads, the beautiful thing is the more that you get used to them and understand it, what happens is you start to go, oh, well, B flat, you know, major 7 kind of does equal D minor, right? You know, G minor in a way is kind of like C9. Like, once you start to see that and then incorporate the shapes, then kind of you look at things different. Like, licks become the same, you know, and it takes a long time to do that. You know, it doesn't happen overnight, but, you know, that's why learning these shapes and seeing all that, and then also seeing them for what they are, is like, kind of in the beginning of this lesson, one of the first things I said was F and D minor are sort of the same, right? Now, tonically, are they different? Yes. One is happy, one is sad. But when it comes to soloing and doing stuff, there's a lot of similarities. You just have to get the happy to the sad sound kind of straight in your head, if that makes sense. So yeah, like, you know, observe that kind of stuff. Like, okay, so here, and then here was the other thing I was going to say, right? Go into the C chord, right? C is 5 and in the key of F. So naturally, which almost, you know, tons of people get and know, it's such a familiar sound, is I'm going to use a C7th. I'm not going to go, is it wrong? No. And sometimes that's a stylistic choice. And then you know, land on F. I mean, you know, in this example, it could work in a couple of situations. I mean, if it was like country or something, I mean, I could actually go either way. You could do that or that. Right? But like I said, as these arrangements, you know, you're going to see, we're going to take the same melody and build it a few times with different triadic, you know, arrangements, chord melody kind of stuff. Some of those choices, you just, you know, it's just good to know. And, you know, like a lot of us, I mean, we already know, like a 5 chord is a dominant chord, you know, it's always take me home, right? So some of those choices, like I said, are naturally just sort of built, you know, I'm going to do that in here. Like, it's taste though, right? And that's the thing too, is like, just like with the G chord, you could have kept it a G, but I went for that. You know, also too, the more kind of, you know, we're not even dealing with a whole lot of colors here. It's just really like the 7th degree, you know. But by doing that, you know, it's going to lend itself to more jazz-like territory or whatever, where if you kept it just, you know... I could have just kept G minor there, right? Nothing wrong with it. And it's better than, you know, just single note if, you know, if you want to fill things out. But, you know, like the other stuff, it just sounds hip. Right? And what that is, too, sometimes, that's our line, right? And that's what makes that sound so hip. So like in bar 7, you know, I have a G minor like this, right? Like I said, knowing all the triads everywhere, we're coming from, you know, if nobody's seeing it, it's from this. right? What I'm doing is I have that. Now here's the thing. This is kind of like it's a funky chord. It's a G flat 7. You have your root, your third, and your flat 7, right? It also kind of has that like minor major 7 sort of sound, and it's got the 6 in there. If it was G, like minor major, whatever you call that. And then you just have a G minor with the F again, right? Like just like that. Right? And like, look, I see all that way too, and that's important as well. Anytime you can, if you think of a big chord, we're dealing with triad, little chords and stuff at this point, right? But like, look, more power to you if, like I said, in Slices of Jazz too, it's like if you could put a song to like an interval or whatever. I think I talked about like, the Simpsons with the sharp 11 sound, right? More power to you. Anything that can make, you work faster like that and smarter is great. So, if you see that, those are the big, meat and potatoes chord. That's what's going on there, right? But now we're just breaking it down. But see, also what's so cool about this kind of stuff is there's sort of like it's cleaner in a way, and like, especially, if you're like in a trio setting or something, rather than just, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, like I said, but it's just sort of, it's really nice. And the cool thing too about this stuff is like, once you sort of get them all, and, if you take like some of your favorite tunes and melodies and stuff, by seeing all these little shapes, I mean, sometimes just the root third and the fifths, or like the major 7, or just a flat 7, like on the C chord, it works. You don't have to fancy it up with a whole bunch of, color tones either. So yeah, that's that. Now, like I said, like this one, just to recap, it's like we're doing the passing tones, right? Now here's the thing too, is you can play more, right? You can literally harmonize every note, and that's what we're going to do now. Now, saying that too, you don't like necessarily, it can kind of sound overkill sometimes, but the thing is too, is like sometimes to learn this stuff, you kind of just got to wear it out, and by going down that, that rabbit hole, it helps with, just knowing the territory everywhere, right? So like, like that last one, it works on its own. I mean, if that was like, I don't know, I was playing that at a gig or something, I would be fine with that. I think everybody around you would be fine, remember that, I mean, simple works, it really does. But now, like I said, let's bring up Triad Harmony Study number 2. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add, some diminished, some augmented, but we're also going to harmonize every note. So, a good way to use triads for harmonies is, look at your melody notes, right? And like essentially what I'm doing, kind of going back to how I was thinking of it, you could do this so many different ways. I mean, you really could. But if you look here, I have a triad on every single melody note, right? Now, the second one, I chose G minor with B flat. I could have done a C chord, right? Because what you want to do is look at your roots, thirds, and fifths, and what chords do they fit into. Now, obviously, certain chord progressions, like I chose a pretty standard sort of thing that makes sense. It's easy to listen to. Not the only option, like I keep saying. But, you could have gone... well, let's just play the first 2 bars, right? So now what I'm going to do, instead of using it as a passing tone, the G note, because it's not in an F chord, I'm going to put a G minor chord in there real quick. So I'm going to go, right? First option was, right? From the beginning, we've come a long way already, right? Now we have... then, and now we, now we have, and then, what did I do here? Flat nine, or the diminished thing. I'm gonna explain why I called it that in a second, but, and then, right? Augmented. Remember when we talked about last week, what's a good example of an augmented thing? Remember Oh Darling with the Beatles? Oh, no. Please believe me. Right? Perfect example, and that's why I chose that, It's a lot of tension. That note wants to go home, which is A, because the next chord we're going to is the F chord, and A is the third of it, right? Because we go home. So that's why that works. That's what drags our ear like that. Right? So like I said, this may be overkill. Like going back, I'll play through and then I could show you some other stuff. But you have, pretty cool. Like I said, it's a study in a way where it's showing you, now look, if you just broke it down even from this, like we did earlier. No, sorry. From the diatonic standpoint, right? Like that's just kind of going up and down. A lot of the chords in here are diatonic. Excuse me. So yeah, G note, like I said, that is the root of the G minor chord. It works perfectly there. That's why I chose it. Now, it's also what? It's the fifth of a C chord. Completely different flavor, right? What if you did, you took the C root, like I said, you subbed it out with the flat 7. You'd have this. See, another great option. We could talk about this all day. We don't have all that time, but like I said, that's why, write this melody out, print it out, whatever you want to do. Get creative. Just think, okay, what chords, what else could fit under there? Does it make sense? Hell, you could do an A flat major 7 if you wanted. It's kind of weird, but it could work, by subbing the root out for that, like I said, it's not the most common, but there's so many different combinations. Obviously, like a 2 minor, which is the G minor in the key of F, right, and a C with the 5, right, is a great option. But like I said, here's another thing I'll say about that is sometimes when I'm like working up a tune or something like this, say I have like a trio gig and what I'll do is I'll make mental notes of that, and like I might play it the first time, very simple, and then maybe on the second A section, let's just talk about a standard form like A B A tune, right? So you have 32 bars, 1A, 2A, second A, the B section, and then the A section. Maybe the first time I'll just go. And then and then maybe then the bridge comes in, say it's the last A section. Right, like so many options, and like just there's not a lot going on there. We're, in 30 minutes here, we've already gone through those 3. Like I said, be creative with it. You can get a lot out of this kind of stuff. All right, so like I said, going back from the beginning, G, I used a G minor there. It works great. Back to D minor, right? Now, sometimes I'll say this too with triads, right? Like, if we wanted to do a D minor 7, you know, you could take the root right there. And when I was writing this, I thought about this. Here's the root, right? Well, it's like, well, technically, Austin says, you know, you can move that back. And you know, that's a D minor 7 technically, right? We have an A, an F, and, you know, a C. But it also sounds very much like an F, right? And that's because they're sort of the same thing. And that's why I said knowing the key signature trick and all that, you know, relative minor, relative major, all that, you know, all that is very helpful. But that's also why I say, you know, sometimes with this stuff, guys, take it with a grain of salt and let your ear guide you. That's the thing. It's like, you know, it doesn't do anything for me. I want that D note in there. You know, you could take the D note and maybe sub it for the E for the 2, right? That's another trick. We talked about that a little bit last week. Like I said, it starts, then it sounds very modern to me, like more modern jazz or something, but you know. But it works because then we can go back to B flat and then we go back down to the D, right? Because that's the third of that. You see what I'm saying? And you kind of have those inner lines there. But yeah, just you know, think about that. Like, definitely let your ear guide you with that kind of stuff. So then bar 3, like I said, B flat. I said root, piece of cake. I can keep that B flat chord there. Now we got a C note. Well, what do I want to do there? I just chose C. C chord. It's easy, right? Nothing wrong with it. Sounds fine. Now we're back to G. You know, maybe another option there would be, you know, you could do a C7th like that. Right? But I just stuck with good old G minor again with the B flat and the bass there. And then, now here, is that, no, I kept it, yeah. Oh, here we go, yeah. And then we have G flat. So this is the use of the diminished, right? Here's my D note, right? Also kind of equals G7 flat 9, which is kind of a very altered sound. That's getting more like jazz kind of world. But it's tension, right? And then here's the cool part about that. And this is what like the inner line stuff is. Then I go down here, the line keeps coming down, right? So we got dun, then bum, 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 right? And there's just, you know, like what we learned last week with the augmented, the sharp 5 or the G sharp, and then you go back home, or you know, back to tonic, the parent key F, whatever you want to call it, right? There we go, sorry. Right? Or you could, I think I did that earlier. Right? And that's where we're going, the lines, you know, bum, bum. Right? Like I said, that's what's so cool about these little triads. I feel like when you learn the big chords, you don't see those obvious little things. And, you know, like I said, they're just, you know, there's not as much going on. You know, it even from a frequency perspective, it's just a nice clean sound. You know, that'd be another way to finger it right there, like in the last example. Right. So in a way, we're using this too. It's kind of like arranging. Just using, you know, what you know, but, you know, like I said, just look at, it doesn't have to be this complicated. Remember, this is a study to get your brain going like this, but certainly you can come away with something, you know, that you like. You know, and remember, what the important part is you want to look at your melody note and then see what kind of chord you can put underneath it. And the easiest way, which is pretty much like how I did this example, is mostly with, you know, just sort of, you know, diatonic stuff. I mean, the game changer in this one is the G7, you know, it's got like fine sound. But I said this a little bit too. Remember with arranging, and like I said, if you go back to Slices of Jazz, I think it's the last lesson I talk about this. A really cool trick somebody told me a long time ago was you can a 1, a 1, 2, a 6, or a major 7th. You can sub a diminished there, and for some reason it works. And that's what I'm doing there. That's why I have that. The D note is the 6 of F, right? So I'm just like, oh, well, I'll just make it a diminished triad there. That's where it's coming from. I'm sorry. I think I might have said G. I meant E. Right? Which is the 7th secondary dominant. And like I said, if you go back to Slices of Jazz, highly recommend that course. You'll kind of get, especially I think even in lesson 1, I talk about some different scales and how to play, put that scale to a chord. So that's kind of, what I'm thinking right there. Like I said, then the rest of it is just right and then down to F. Cool. So that's enough with that. Okay, so now the last one, and I find this to be very important as well. So guys, let's pull up Triad Harmony study number 3 with strings 2 through 4. We've all heard this, I feel like especially people that play jazz, but it's just like, oh, well, learn a tune, learn it in all 12 keys, right? There's a lot of truth to that. I mean, it helps you understand the fretboard. It's same with like when you transcribe a solo or you just learn a solo. Learn it in a bunch of different areas. It will make you much sharper. I promise you that. So with this, I just thought, let's learn it in different strings. Now, remember last week I said, we're going to concentrate mostly on strings 1 through 4. So we just kind of did, those examples we just did were a combination of 1 through 3 and 2 through 4. But now this is just concentrating on 2 through 4, right? It's the exact same thing, just in a different area on the neck. But like I said, I really encourage you to do that because it, rather than just getting really comfortable with it down there, check it out. Now you know it here. They're diminished, right? E note, right? I said major 7th of the key of F. You can always sub a diminished there and it works. So we went. Now check this out. I did change the ending of this, and this is just a suspension, right? You could always sub 4 for 3 with the triad. We have F there, right? So that's just kind of a little bit of a delayed resolution, excuse me, right? But like I said, look, I mean, now that we know that, take it and learn it in a different area. And, they're the same notes, I mean, but they speak differently, And I will say, from a guitar player perspective, I mean, I find myself using those inside strings all the time, especially for minor, we were talking about last week, like if you get into R&B, all that stuff works great, on those inside strings. But like I said, and what it is you start to see like, F is coming from there, B, G minor, I kind of see it there or there, like I said, it starts to really unravel the neck, which is, what we're trying to navigate here. And you see some really neat stuff. And it makes you a better player, And like I said, I like the cage system. I think it works. You could see, it's just a good way to see all the 5 shapes and whatnot. But D minor, right? You know, I made it a minor 7th there. I mean, I could have, you know, I probably should have now that I think about it again. It sounds more D minor when you have, you know, the D right there, but... Right? Rather than this. That's why experimenting's, you know, it's cool. Let your ear guide you. And then B flat coming from right there. C coming from right there. D minor, you know. You know, there's my G minor. And then we have like an A version of F, right? Same G minor. Right? The same little line there. And then I just changed that out. And that's kind of, you know, just delaying the resolution with the suspension, right? Complete, right? So, yeah, I mean, that pretty much wraps up, you know, this lesson, guys. I mean, I hope you learned something from it. We incorporated everything. We subbed a few notes out. Couple of cool arrangement tricks in there. You know, like I said, I mean, create your own. I mean, man, if you're feeling really adventurous, like I said, for this course and just the sake of time and stuff, we're not going to really get into the lower strings. But, I mean, you could very well just write one of those, you know, and even at the lower register. I mean, either way, just by honing in on that and seeing everything, it will make you a better player. And like I said, it's kind of a lot, you know. I mean, like last week we went over, it's 4 different types of triads, the whole entire neck. But, you know, a few minutes a day, you know, get going and then start putting it to melodies like this, or write your own melody. And like how I write these things is like, I just kind of came up with and I didn't really have a concept of harmony in my head except for just writing the melody. And then I thought, okay, what kind of chords can I put behind it? And, you know, these are like this is, you know, 8-10 bars. You know, you can do this kind of stuff all day, a bunch of different keys, do some in major, do some in minor, you know, just see what you can come up with. And, you know, I'm sure, you know, and, you know, especially writing stuff out like that, it makes it more fun. I think it makes it musical. You know, send them to me if you have a question or whatever. I'd be happy to take a look. But, you know, either way, I mean, you know, you're learning a whole new kind of skill set there. You know, that is great to know. And I think you'd be happy at the end of the day. You know, knowing that you did that. So, all right, y'all. I guess it's time for the Q&A part here. So, yeah, let's get started with that. Being able to, you know, apply some harmony to it. Okay, cool. So let's get to some questions. So question number 1.